Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. So the other day I was on Instagram and I, for whatever reason, took notice of how much content was in my feed talking about health and wellness and self-care. And it made me think about how far we've come in this space and how openly now we talk about the importance of taking good care of ourselves. So I thought it would be fun to have a conversation about it with one of my favorite experts when it comes to wellness. So I'm very excited to welcome Marisa Sweeney, the founder of Be Well Integrative Health. Thank you so much for being here, Marisa.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So before we start talking about wellness, I'm kind of curious how you got involved in this space and what your journey was like. And I mean, you've helped so many people, but how did it start for you?
Yeah, so I'm a dietitian, really first and foremost. And that's still the majority of what I do day in and day out is I work with people in nutrition counseling. And the more people, this is years ago, because I've now had Be Well for like almost 15 years, really. So the more people that came to me looking for a lifestyle change, the more I realized how multifaceted that really is. It's really not just what you eat or just your diet. And I can't tell you how many people would come in saying something like, oh, well, if I could just stop snacking, things would be so much better. Almost like that was going to be the one thing that suddenly was the catalyst that fixed so much in their life. And it made me realize that I am not the only professional and healing modality, I guess you could say, that people should really be working with. My whole scope of practice is very much diet, medical nutrition therapy, so we can integrate it into patient plans, working with their doctor and their team, and I can make something very tailored and specific for people. But if maybe you should be working with a mental health professional, like that's for me to position myself and give professional advice in that area would be doing people a disservice. So I wanted to bring in mental health professionals. I wanted to bring in other people from different areas and different disciplines of health and wellness to provide a very holistic approach to lifestyle changes and just happiness and being more fulfilled and living a better life. So that's essentially what Be Well is a team of dietitians now. That's what it's evolved into. And we also have a whole team of mental health professionals. We have acupuncture, we have physical therapy, we have a whole yoga studio, and a few other kind of modalities like Reiki, which may or may not be so well known. It's definitely not a Western medicine thing, but it is an Eastern medicine. And we're all licensed healthcare practitioners that do holistic work. So there's a safety, I think, that people can take in knowing that that the practices that we do, although holistic and although we're going to spend a lot of time with you, are sound practices. So yeah.
Was there a moment for you where you realized this was the work you wanted to do growing up? Was nutrition something that you paid attention to, or was there a moment where you realized, hey, this is something that I want to pursue and I want to learn more about?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because I find my story to be kind of funny even. But I've always had an interest in nutrition. I always thought it was just something, and everywhere you turn too, I feel like it's almost impossible to not have some kind of interest in it because
Right.
it's in every magazine you pick up, it's every TV show, it's every conversation you have at the water cooler at work. So I've always had an interest in it, but I was actually in my sophomore year at Montclair State University, and I switched my majors so many times I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just took a nutrition class, and a nutrition class that particularly focused on, as an elective, that focused on especially like food insecurity and helping people that it was like coming from a very altruistic kind of
Oh, wow.
standpoint from a public health, and just after the first class of this class, I was like, this is what I need to do. And I stayed after and I talked to the professor, and like that just kickstarted this whole path of like I've just never been so sure of something in my life. And it's so different than a lot of other dietitians that I know, especially because they usually have some really big heroic story, maybe of my mom overcame cancer and that's something that I want to continue on and share with the world. Or I guess I'm happy in a way that I don't have a story like that, which means like people around me have been healthy and there hasn't been like too much of a health traumatic experience going on that was the catalyst to me picking this career. But I just got lucky with an elective, and it is something that I absolutely fell in love with.
That's
And to this day, it's I would never go back and do it again. It's like the best decision I ever made.
that's amazing. So as you learned more about it, did you start making changes to your life that you made noticeable differences?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of it is that, nutrition information is coming at us, as I was saying, is coming at us from all different
Yeah.
angles. Who knows what to believe anymore? So then when you start approaching it from a science-based perspective, and especially having it as my undergrad major and also having a master's in it, and also I'm like a semester away from having a doctoral degree in it also, you kind of learn a scientific perspective to be able
Mm.
to assess information and make a decision as to whether this is does it actually have any validity to it, or is this somebody just trying to sell you a supplement? And I think there's a lot of that, and it's hard to navigate. So yeah, I've definitely, like, the more I've been exposed to a science-based approach to nutrition, definitely the more I've changed over the years. Absolutely.
Well, and that's even you mentioned something that I even started this conversation with, where if you go on Instagram, it's like everyone is a quote unquote expert.
Yeah.
Half those people are trying to sell you a supplement or a powder or a program. So for the average person who doesn't have the education that you have and the background that you have, how do you sort of figure out, like, first of all, what is wellness, and
Yeah.
how do you determine where you go for good information?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think wellness is an amalgamation of a lot of different, like, I almost, like, an analogy that I like to use is that everybody has a puzzle in which pieces of our lives fit together to really make us whole. And wellness is the collection of all of those pieces. And for some people, each one of those pieces are going to represent certain things. Like faith, I think, is a good example, where that's going to be a much bigger piece in somebody's puzzle, maybe than somebody else, where it would be a much smaller piece. But it's still important, and it's still a piece to the whole. So I think wellness, especially as you compare it to health, and nowadays those words are becoming a little bit more synonymous than they've
Mm.
ever been. But wellness is still, I think, looking at the practices of our daily lives, our intake, meaning not only diet, but, like, what are we listening to? Who are the people in our
Mm.
lives? What are the thoughts that are in our head? Are we talking to ourselves positively? It's all this kind of stuff that make up this piece of the puzzle of living a happy and healthy life. So in a way, wellness really does lead to health. And it's hard. I think it's really difficult to weed out what would be useful information and what would be not useful information. Just coming from the dietitian world, and knowing just about all the dietitians in New Jersey, I would say that's an easy go-to if you're
Sure.
looking to improve the diet route of things, or if you feel like diet and nutrition is something that you particularly want to work on. Work with somebody that is an actual, like, licensed professional in that area. But I also do believe when it comes to things like mental health, um, there's, like, maybe talk therapy isn't something that resonates with you, but maybe going to a yoga class is something
Mm.
that is. So I think there's different healing modalities, and there's different ways that you can enhance different pieces of wellness that all kind of fit together, and they all kind of, affect each other in your life. And it's like a lifelong journey of figuring out what it is that you need, and then going to sound professionals. It's honestly one of the reasons why Be Well is what it is
Mm.
because we're all licensed healthcare practitioners that do holistic work. So I do think the wellness world can sometimes get a little, like, is this a person just, much like you said, is this a person just trying to sell me a supplement? Is this a person just trying to sell me a test? And, like, they're not actually really qualified to know what the results mean, or the results even going to help me at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's so, or to know if the test is even valid or not. So, but if you get licensed healthcare practitioners doing holistic work, you get people that know both sides of the coin, and they have an appreciation for a science-based, research and evidence-based approach to lifestyle living, which is not something you see very often.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
getting there. I feel like it's growing, and there's more of a demand.
And I think the flip side to that too is that um, because more people are talking about wellness and health and self-care, it feels like it's more accessible to more people, and maybe people are feel more comfortable reaching out and asking for help, because it's part of our normal conversation now. We've sort of normalized talking about how do people take care of themselves? How do you get healthy? What does wellness mean to you? So do you find that, and I feel like that's happened kind of quickly. Like when I was younger, I don't remember my mom ever saying she needs like a self-care day. That wasn't a thing, but now we prioritize it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great thing that we've over the years trended in the direction of having the conversations around what it takes for us to be healthy, what it takes for us to be well, to be more common and more acceptable to talk, I think, openly and plainly about. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the internet,
Sure.
because now I'm almost thinking back to my grandparents' generation, and like, so, or you know what, even my parents, not to put them on the spot, but maybe I will. But, and so my dad
I
is in
already
his
called out my
70s,
mom, Marisa, so you're good. I already called
you
her out.
know?
So it's fine.
Yeah, my dad's in his mid 70s, and he'll go to his doctor, and whatever his doctor says is taken without question.
Hmm.
So the doctor's like, here's your script, and see you later. But now, with especially the millennial generation, which are really just starting to really use their health insurance, and starting to see doctors and maybe have concerns about whatever it is regarding health and wellness, they're Googling things
Yeah.
far before they make that appointment, and they're looking at specialists, and they want to be an active part of living healthier and having more wellness in their life, rather than just going to somebody and having a blind faith and going home. So I think the trend is going towards people want to take an active role in their health and their wellness. And with that, it's just going to parlay right into adopting lifestyle changes and things like that. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing. And we're getting there with mental health still. I do
Yeah.
feel, there seems to be this stigma that we're fighting every single day with mental health. But, I tell a lot of my patients a lot that just like we all need to put in effort to maintain our physical bodies, we need to put in effort to maintain our mental health also. It's not something that should be forgotten about, but, it's a rare occasion that you're going to see somebody taking a selfie of them, going to their psychologist appointment, but you're going to see
Right.
all the gym selfies. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So like, I don't know if that will ever be a thing, but that's just an example of like, there's a stigma around one and not around the other, but it's slowly, I think everything's slowly kind of coming around, and it's a good thing.
So I want to talk about some of the things that you mentioned, some of the things people can do to become healthier and pay more attention to their own wellness. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll jump back into that. So we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Shumritz. We're talking with Marisa Sweeney from Be Well Integrative Health Services. Marisa, right before the break, we had talked a little bit. You touched on the importance of mental health in terms of overall health and wellness. Can you talk a little bit more about really how important that mind-body connection is?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The mind-body connection is huge. And it's kind of funny when you think in westernized medicine. And when I say that, it's kind of us going to our doctors and utilizing healthcare in the US as we know it. It's very separate, right? Like if you feel like you have an issue that is in the mental health realm, you go to a psychologist, maybe you go to a psychiatrist, something like that, a social worker for counseling. And if you feel like you have a physical ailment, you go to somebody else. And even that is broken off into specialists. And I think it almost becomes this separation and a silo effect of people or professionals not really talking to each other, all about the same person.
Mm.
So, and I do think we are slowly trending away from that. I think it's a big ship. It's going to take a lot to turn it around. But it's so important to really look at both at the same time. And it's reflected in a lot of ways. For example, the whole gut brain thing is
Right.
really big in the research right now. And it's a two-way street, as in, and this might not be the most pleasant example, but almost imagine you were to get horrible news out of nowhere. You can get nauseous right away from
Yeah.
that. And that's an extreme example of how what you think is reflected in your gut like, and but also vice versa. Like if you're having a lot of gastrointestinal issues, that also can affect your day to day. It can affect your sleep. It can affect your mood that day. And even ultimately, if this two-way street isn't working in a nice flow as it's supposed to be, where one kind of complements the other rather than there being imbalances that are shared, it can lead to things like chronic diseases and stuff like that. And we're honestly just scratching the surface in the science world with that. So I think there's going to be more to come. But at the same time, on the other side of the world, and in Eastern medicine, this is something that they've known for eons. So we're just really coming around to it. But I think it's incredibly important that you can't have a balanced and healthy life if one great aspect of your health and wellness is suffering while the other one seems to be okay. Everything overlaps. It's almost like a big Venn diagram
Yeah.
of how things touch each other and the cycles and everything. So yeah, both have to be considered.
And what you're talking about too is really a holistic approach to health. And I feel like sometimes in some circles, when we talk about that here, it's still considered alternative medicine
Yeah.
and not traditional. But do you get a sense that that's changing? You kind of mentioned that
It's coming around. I
yeah,
think there's a demand for it. It
yeah,
was going back to what I was saying about like the millennial generation that's
yeah,
just starting to like utilize their health insurance. They're just starting to really utilize their, doctors and get involved in like the healthcare system and stuff. People are looking for specialists. Like people are looking for a team approach and they want to be an active part in their care. So, and like I said, people have Googled everything and there's a support group online for just about every
yeah.
ailment that there is and every condition that there is. So people are finding community within it. And I think it's even empowering for some people that, may have some kind of chronic condition or something like that, or something that is not so easily remedied that, they feel like they could take an active part in some way or another. So, yeah, I think we're slowly trending that way. It's unfortunately like with some of these older doctors that have really been stuck in their ways for a long time, they look at anything that deviates away from the hard science to
Right.
be something that's not valid. And there's a whole theory behind that. You can think of, how people sue doctors all the time and it's like, well,
Right.
why did you take a chance and recommend this to a patient? So I think there's a lot of systematic problems going
Mm.
on. However, you still can be a licensed healthcare practitioner. You could be a dietitian. You could be a physical therapist. You can be a certified yoga teacher. You can be like, there's actual like science now that are developing around these other, what used to be considered to be alternative
Right.
professions or allied health professionals, they're often called, where
Right.
we can really provide people that holistic approach, but then also have a science backing to it. So we're kind of walking this line right now. I think where health and wellness really do become synonymous, and we're just trying to figure it out.
So you mentioned, patients Googling before they go to see their specialist or see a doctor. Do you like it when patients come to you and they've already Googled, or is that helpful or can that be harmful?
It could definitely be helpful and harmful, I
Okay.
think. Absolutely. I don't think there's a single person that has made an appointment with me that hasn't at least tried to Google what they think their issue is first. I think it's just 2024 and it's just the way of the world now. So it doesn't bother me so much. If people like it actually almost shows me that they're really engaged because every now and
Mm,
then doctors just recommend, oh, go see the dietitian. And they come in and
right.
they're like, I'm just here because my doctor told me to. But if somebody makes the appointment on their own accord and they've done a little bit of what they believe to be their own research by Googling stuff, it at least shows me that they're engaged. And I'm happy to really spend the time with people to show them why or why not that might be information that is helpful to them or not helpful to them. And that's also goes along with building trust with people. And so if people come in like already amped up, ready to tell me what they read on Google, it does take a little extra time to maybe debunk that, but maybe
Right.
not. So it's not everything is incorrect. So it doesn't bother me so much. No.
So I do want to ask you, because you are a registered dietitian and the past president of the New Jersey Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I had to read that to make sure I get that correct.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a mouthful.
what role does food play in our overall health and wellness? And because I feel like some people, other than the obvious, right? But I do think that there is a very strong connection in what we put in and what we kind of get out of our bodies. How do you kind of quantify the role and qualify the role that food plays in our health?
Yeah, I think it plays a huge one, an undeniable huge one, and I think it affects us in the short term, as in like it's going to affect your mood that day. It's going to affect your gut health, which then has an effect on your brain, and like I said, vice versa with that too. It's going to impact how you sleep. It's going to impact your energy levels, and then that also has an influence on how you interact with people in this world, and how you function every day, and even like a level of happiness and fulfillment that comes out of every day. So it's a little bit of like a snowball effect, or like a domino effect of how nutrition and what you eat can affect you in the short term, but also there's the long term too, and really everywhere in between. So just about every chronic disease that there is, genetic component or not, has been linked in some sort of way with dietary intake. And I think people get stuck in this all or nothing kind of mentality. They're like, oh, well, I'm so busy. I have to take care of my kids, and I have my job, and I have this. I don't have time to meal prep. There's no way. And they just kind of throw in the towel and give up. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing mentality, or it's actually better to not have this all or nothing mentality. Even just kind of starting with, I'm going to see what I can do about adding a vegetable to dinner every night. That's a huge improvement. Nutrition, or for some people that maybe didn't do it before, nutrition is so much about what you're doing on a consistent basis, and not these one-off little like, oh, I went to this party and now I've thrown the whole effort away. Right. So,
because even small changes can have a big
absolutely
impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Small changes can.
I want to just mention one other thing, that for anyone who follows you on your social media, you are one of the most supportive, encouraging, relatable experts that I follow, and to me it feels like that's part of the wellness that you like portray, because you just put out all this like positivity and goodness, and so thank you for doing all that.
Thank you.
But you definitely serve as a role model for how you can be positive. If people want more information, they want to get in touch with you, what's the website?
Website is just Be Well IHS. It stands for integrativehealthservices.com.
Perfect. So we like to end all of these conversations with 3 big little questions. Are you ready for them?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the first one is, how do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
So that's a really great question. I mean, I think there's 2 ways I like to approach bad moods. One, sometimes you just got to let yourself feel it. It's almost like you got to let your brain kick and scream a little bit, and then you move on, because sometimes just stuffing it away and trying to maintain being happy all the time is just, it's like, that's an imbalance in itself. Yeah. So sometimes you just got to let it happen, and then you move on, and the second way is I really try for everything negative that happens, you can really sit down and write down 10 positive things, there's always a balance depending on a perspective that you decide to take on, where you can really develop a sense of gratitude for all the great stuff. So gratitude for me seems to really be the root to all happiness. Yeah, if you can find yourself grateful for the positive things, it just kind of casts a shadow on all the negative stuff, and it doesn't seem as so bad.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I agree. That does it for me too.
Gratitude.
All right. What is your go-to karaoke song?
What is my go-to karaoke? I got to tell you, I'm not the biggest on karaoke, although I can be talked into it. Okay. Probably anything Britney Spears, maybe.
Okay.
If I'm going to karaoke, it's going to be a fun song.
Okay.
So anything anything like that would be probably, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Yeah.
I love that. And last question, what is one of your favorite spots in New Jersey?
Favorite spots in New Jersey. So as like a side hustle that turned into a full-time job, I own the New Jersey Vegan Food Festival. And with that, I've thrown vegan events, like these kind of really fun festivals, like all over New Jersey. So it's afforded me the opportunity to really meet the people within that town, because it's very community integrated to wherever we have the event. And so I really love Asbury Park. I actually really love Morristown. I don't see myself ever leaving Morristown. People in North Jersey are always like, when I say this, but But I really love Atlantic City too. The people down there are really amazing. There's such great efforts and great hearts of people that are really trying to make living down there so much better.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know if I necessarily have like a single, I don't know if you were looking for a restaurant or something.
You just love
like
everything,
that.
Marisa. You just love everything.
I like, if I had to pick one place, it would be Morristown. I can't deny my love for Morristown.
Morristown is great.
Really, it's great.
Morristown's great. Marisa Sweeney, Be Well Integrative Health Services. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I think this was great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course, that does it for today's Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.